Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the vast chamber of the Galactic Council and felt the weight of 12 alien gazes upon him. The chamber was enormous, with curved walls that reached up into shadows and seats arranged in a perfect circle around the central speaking platform where he now stood alone. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet that reminded him of burning flowers, though he could never be sure what any of these alien species actually smelled like. The Counselor Vextai rose. From his elevated seat, and his scaled hide gleamed under the artificial lights that bathed the chamber. His voice carried across the space with the authority of someone who had never been questioned in 300 years of life. Representative Kim Tae-ho of the human species, you stand before this council to receive our final decision regarding your people's continued membership in our great alliance. Kim kept his face blank and his hands clasped behind his back in the military posture that had served him well through 40 years of service to humanity. He had expected this moment for months, ever since the reports started coming in about human expansion into the outer territories and the new technologies that Earth's scientists had been developing in secret. The Council had grown nervous about humanity's progress, and nervous counselors made dangerous decisions. Vextai continued speaking, and his words echoed in the chamber like pronouncements from some ancient god. For 150 years, your species has enjoyed the protection and guidance of this council. We have shared our knowledge with you and allowed you to establish colonies in territories that we designated as suitable for your kind. We have been patient with your aggressive nature and your tendency toward violence, even when it made other member species uncomfortable. Kim almost smiled at that. The council loved to remind everyone about humanity's violent past, as if the other species had never fought wars or conquered territories. The difference was that humans had been honest about their history, while the others preferred to pretend their own dark periods had never happened. However, Vextai's voice grew harder. Recent intelligence. Reports indicate that your species has been developing military technologies in violation of our agreements. You have expanded beyond your designated sectors without council approval, and you have established research facilities that operate outside our oversight protocols. This behavior cannot continue. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the environmental systems that kept the atmosphere breathable for all 12 species. Kim could feel the tension building like electricity. Before a storm. He knew what was coming next, but he waited for the words to be spoken aloud. Counselor Zithara spoke from her position across the chamber. Her insectoid features were impossible for humans to read, but her voice carried the cold precision of someone delivering a death sentence. The Council has voted unanimously. Human military vessels will be surrendered to Council control within 60 standard days. All orbital defense platforms around human worlds will be dismantled. All research facilities operating outside Council oversight will be shut down, and their data transferred to Council scientists. Kim felt something cold settle in his stomach, but his expression remained neutral. He had been a soldier long enough to recognize when someone was trying to break his spirit through intimidation tactics, the Council expected him to argue or plead or offer compromises. They had no idea what humanity was really capable of, Zithara continued. Furthermore, all human colonies established without Council approval will be evacuated, and the territories returned to Council administration. Human representation in this body will be reduced to observer status only, with no voting rights on matters affecting galactic policy. Your species will accept permanent protectorate status under direct Council oversight. The silence that followed was absolute. Kim could hear his own heartbeat and the soft whisper of the recycled air moving through the chamber's ventilation systems. Somewhere, in the shadows above, he knew there were recording devices capturing every word and every expression for the historical archives. The moment would be remembered as the day humanity learned its place in the galactic order, or, so the Council thought. Kim took a slow breath, and spoke clearly so that his words would carry to every corner of the chamber. "No." The single word seemed to hang in the air like a physical thing. Vextai's scaled features shifted in what might have been surprise or confusion. "You refuse to comply with the Council's directive." "That is correct," Kim said. "Humanity rejects these terms in their entirety." Now there was movement in the seats as the various counselors turned to look at each other. Their alien features made their expressions difficult to read, but Kim could sense their bewilderment. No species had ever simply refused a council directive before. The very idea seemed to be beyond their comprehension. Counselor Mordeth spoke from the highest seat in the chamber. His voice was so old and dry it sounded like wind through dead leaves. "Perhaps the human representative does not understand the consequences of defying this council. We are offering your species a chance to continue existing under our protection. The alternative is exile." Kim finished the sentence. "Complete severance from galactic civilization, loss of all trade agreements and technological exchanges, isolation in your home system until such time as you come to your senses." The old alien's silence confirmed that Kim had guessed correctly. "We understand the consequences perfectly," Kim said, "and we accept them." The chamber erupted in a chaos of alien voices speaking in languages that Kim's translator could barely keep up. He caught fragments of words that suggested disbelief, anger, and something that might have been fear. The counselors had expected resistance, but not this kind of calm acceptance of exile. Vextai raised one clawed hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Again, you speak for all of humanity in this matter." "I do," Kim said. "Prime Minister Choi Hae-jin sends her regards and her regrets that diplomatic relations have reached this point. Your people will change their minds when they realize what they are giving up," Zith-Ara said. "The protection of the Council has allowed humanity to spread across the stars and develop technologies that would have taken you centuries to discover on your own." Kim allowed himself a small smile. "Counselor Zith-Ara, I believe you may be surprised by what humanity can accomplish when we put our minds to it." He reached into his uniform jacket and withdrew a data pad. The movement caused several of the alien guards to tense, but Kim simply placed the device on the speaking platform and activated it. A holographic display appeared, showing the official seal of the Terran Coalition. "This document formally notifies the Galactic Council that humanity is withdrawing from all treaties, agreements, and obligations. Effective immediately, all human territories, stations, and vessels will return to Earth space within 1 standard year. We will honor existing contracts until their natural expiration, but no new agreements will be entered into." The hologram shifted to show a star map with human colonies marked in blue. There were more of them than the Council had known about. Kim noticed several counselors leaning forward to study the display more carefully. Human merchant vessels will complete their current trade runs and then cease all commercial activity in Council space. Human diplomatic personnel will be recalled within 30 days. Human research data will be transferred to Earth archives, and all collaborative projects will be terminated. Kim paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the alien gazes one by one. "Humanity wishes the Council species well in their future endeavors. We bear no ill will and harbor no desire for conflict. We simply choose to go our own way." The silence stretched until Vextai finally spoke. "This is madness. Your species cannot survive in isolation. You lack the resources and the knowledge to maintain your current level of civilization without Council support." "Perhaps," Kim said. "But that is humanity's choice to make." He picked up the datapad and stepped back from the platform. "The formal documents will be transmitted to your archives within the hour. Good day, counselors." Kim turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind him, he could hear the beginning of what sounded like an argument between the counselors, but he did not look back. The heavy doors closed behind him with a sound like finality. In the corridor outside Captain Park, Sojin was waiting with two human security officers. She fell into step beside him as they walked toward the transport bay. "How did they take it?" she asked. "About as well as expected," Kim said. "They think we're bluffing, are we?" Kim stopped walking and turned to look at her. Captain Park was young for her rank, but she had proven herself in the outer colonies, where human expansion had sometimes required creative solutions to complex problems. She deserved an honest answer. "Captain, in 6 months the Council won't recognize the galaxy they thought they controlled, and in a year they're going to realize that the most dangerous thing about humanity was never our weapons or our military." "What then?" Kim smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Our ability to walk away." Colonel Yoon Jae-sung stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Busan and watched the steady stream of transport ships rising from the planet's surface. Each vessel carried families and equipment and memories of lives that had been built over 3 generations in this distant system. The evacuation was proceeding exactly on schedule, but that did not make it any easier to watch. Behind him, Engineer Limbo Ra was coordinating with the demolition teams that were systematically dismantling the industrial complexes in the asteroid belt. Every piece of human technology was being either loaded onto the transport ships or destroyed. The Council had made it clear that they expected humanity to leave empty-handed, but they had not anticipated how thorough the humans would be. "Status report," Yoon said, without turning away from the viewport. "Sector 7 is 90% clear." Lim replied, "The fusion generators will be offline within 6 hours, and the manufacturing facilities are already being broken down. The mining equipment is too large to transport, so we're following Protocol 7. Protocol 7 meant complete destruction. Anything that could not be taken would be reduced to component atoms. The Council would find nothing useful in the wreckage. The humans had developed the protocol during their early expansion when they realized that some technologies were too dangerous to leave behind. Captain An Min-ho's voice crackled over the communication system from his position aboard the heavy transport New Incheon. "Colonel, we have a problem. The Hegemony Patrol Vessel Conquest is requesting permission to inspect our cargo." Yoon turned to look at Lim, who was already pulling up the sensor displays. The alien ship was large and heavily armed, but it was maintaining a respectful distance. The Hegemony had been testing humanity's resolve for weeks, sending patrols to monitor the evacuation and occasionally demanding to inspect human vessels. "Tell them we declined their request." Yoon said, "Remind them that under Section 12 of the Mutual Defense Treaty, human vessels have the right to refuse inspection while in sovereign territory. They say the treaty is void since humanity withdrew from the Council." Yoon smiled. It was the same argument they had been hearing from various alien species for months. They seemed to think that humanity's withdrawal meant that all previous agreements were automatically canceled. The humans had been very careful to word their withdrawal to maintain certain legal protections. "Captain An, please transmit the legal brief that Dr. Lee Dong-woo prepared for this situation. The treaty specifically states that withdrawal from the Council does not void bilateral agreements between species. The Hegemony signed that treaty independently." There was a pause while the legal documents were transmitted. Then An's voice returned with obvious amusement. "Sir, the Hegemony vessel is withdrawing. They say they need to consult with their legal advisors." Lim shook her head as she turned back to her displays. "They really think we didn't plan for this." 3 years. Yoon said, 3 years of preparation and they still don't understand what they're seeing. The evacuation had been planned in secret long before the Council delivered their ultimatum. Human colonies throughout the galaxy had been quietly reducing their visible infrastructure while building hidden transportation and communication networks. The Council thought they were witnessing a panicked retreat, but they were actually seeing the execution of one of the most complex logistical operations in galactic history. A new voice joined the conversation as Dr. Lee Dongwu arrived on the observation deck. The xenobiologist looked tired but satisfied. "The cultural exchange programs have been terminated," he announced. "All human students and researchers are being recalled from alien institutions." "How are they taking it?" Yoon asked. Confused mostly, Lee said, "The Crystalline Consortium offered to let our people stay and continue their studies. They seem to think this is some kind of political gesture that will blow over in a few months. And the research projects. That's where it gets interesting." Lee pulled up a holographic display showing various collaborative research stations scattered across the galaxy. 17 major projects involving human scientists. 9 of them will have to be abandoned completely because the alien researchers don't understand the theoretical frameworks that our people developed. Lim looked up from her control panel. "What about the technology transfers?" Yes, the technology transfers." Lee's expression grew more serious. "It turns out that humanity has been far more generous than we realized. Our scientists have been sharing breakthrough discoveries for decades while assuming that other species would eventually catch up on their own." The display shifted to show a complex web of technological dependencies. The quantum communication networks that the Council uses for faster-than-light messaging. Those are based on human theoretical physics, the medical scanners that most species rely on. For advanced diagnostics, those use human-developed algorithms, the environmental control systems that allow different species to coexist on the same stations. Those are running on human software. Yoon felt a cold realization creeping over him. How much of galactic infrastructure depends on human innovation? "More than anyone wants to admit," Lee said. "We've been quietly maintaining and improving systems that other species take for granted. When our people leave, those systems are going to start failing." Captain On's voice interrupted their conversation. "Colonel, we have another situation. The transport ship Aurora's Dream is reporting that their alien passengers are refusing to disembark." Yoon sighed. The Aurora's Dream was carrying a mixed group of species, including several alien researchers who had been working with humans on various projects. Some of them had apparently decided that they wanted to continue their work regardless of the political situation. "How many?" Yoon asked. 47 individuals from 6 different species. They say they have nowhere else to go. It was a complication that the planners had anticipated. Some aliens had built their entire careers around collaboration with human scientists. Others had formed personal relationships that transcended species boundaries. The evacuation protocols included provisions for alien refugees, but implementing those provisions was politically sensitive. "Tell Captain Park to follow Protocol 15, Yoon said. "Any alien who wishes to travel to human space must formally renounce their citizenship and accept exile from Council territory. They will be granted asylum, but they cannot return." Lee nodded approvingly. 47 people willing to abandon everything for the chance to continue working with humans. That says something about what we've accomplished together. It also says something about what the Council is about to lose." Lim added. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. From the communication system, Engineer Kang Seul-gi's voice filled the observation deck with barely controlled excitement. "Colonel, you need to see this. The hegemony has sent a formal protest to the Council. They're claiming that humanity is sabotaging galactic infrastructure." Yoon exchanged glances with Lee and Lim. "What kind of sabotage?" "They say the quantum communication network is experiencing random failures. The medical facilities on 3 different worlds have reported diagnostic equipment malfunctions, and the environmental systems on the trade station at Vega 7 are producing atmospheric imbalances." Lee started laughing. "They think we're sabotaging their equipment, aren't we?" Lim asked. "Not exactly," Lee said. "We're just stopping Our maintenance routines. The quantum network needs constant calibration, using algorithms that only human physicists understand. The medical equipment requires software updates that our programmers have been providing for free, and the environmental systems. Let me guess, Yoon said. They're running on human-designed feedback loops. Exactly. The alien engineers know how to operate the systems, but they never learned how to maintain them. We've been doing it automatically for so long that they forgot we were doing it at all. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military force or economic domination. They had made themselves indispensable by quietly solving problems that other species didn't even know existed. Now that they were leaving, the true scope of their contributions was becoming visible. Captain On's voice returned to the communication channel. Colonel, the hegemony vessel is back. They're requesting an emergency conference with our senior staff. Tell them we're busy, Yoon said. If they want to discuss technical issues, they can contact our diplomatic office on Earth. Sir, they say it's urgent. They're offering to negotiate new terms for human participation in council activities, Yoon looked at Lee, who shook his head firmly. Too late for that. The scientist said, the evacuation protocols are already in motion. Even if we wanted to stop now, it would take months to reverse the process. And do we want to stop? Lim asked. Yoon considered the question as he watched another transport ship disappear into the darkness between the stars. The ship carried families who had lived their entire lives in this system, but who were now returning to an Earth that many of them had never seen. They were giving up everything they had built for the sake of human independence. No, he said finally. We don't want to stop. The Council had their chance to treat us as equals. They chose to treat us as subjects instead. Now they get to find out what the galaxy looks like without us. Trade Minister Kang Seul-gi stood in the empty offices of the Human Commercial Exchange on Tau Ceti Station and watched her staff pack the last of their personal belongings into storage containers. 18 months had passed since Admiral Kim delivered humanity's withdrawal notice to the Council, and today marked the end of human commercial operations in galactic space. The irony was not lost on her that she was overseeing the closure of the most profitable trading post in the Outer Rim. The exchange had been handling 40% of all commercial traffic in this sector, and its closure would leave a gap that no other species could fill. The aliens had built their trade networks around human logistics and transportation systems, without realizing how dependent they had become. Captain Nam Yu-jin entered the office carrying a data pad and wearing the expression of someone who had been dealing with desperate alien merchants all morning. Minister, the consortium delegation is here again. They're offering triple the standard rates for our shipping contracts. Kang shook her head. Tell them what I told the others. We honor existing contracts until their expiration, but we're not accepting new business. The evacuation schedule cannot be delayed. They say they're willing to wait. They want to negotiate long-term agreements for when humanity returns to galactic commerce. When we return? Kang repeated the words slowly. Captain, do they really think this is temporary? Nam consulted his data pad. The consortium ambassador seems to believe that humanity is using the withdrawal as a negotiating tactic. He thinks we'll be back within 5 years once we realize how much we need galactic trade. Kang walked to the viewport and looked out at the docking bays where alien ships waited in long queues for cargo that would never come. Human transport vessels had been the backbone of interstellar shipping for decades. Their absence was creating bottlenecks throughout the galaxy. The ambassador is welcome to believe whatever makes him comfortable, she said. But he should probably start making other arrangements for his shipping needs. The office door chimed, and Ambassador Rithmol of the Avian Collective entered. Without waiting for permission, his feathered crest was raised in what Kang had learned to recognize as a sign of agitation. Minister Kang, I must speak with you urgently. Ambassador. Kang turned from the viewport. How can I help you? The Collective has voted to offer humanity special trading status independent of the Council. We are prepared to guarantee your commercial rights and provide military protection for your shipping lanes. It was the 15th such offer that Kang had received in Kashmir. The past month, various alien species were beginning to realize that humanity's withdrawal would affect them more than they had anticipated. The offers were becoming increasingly generous and increasingly desperate. "That's very kind," Kang said. "But humanity has made its decision. We appreciate the collective's friendship, but we will not be returning to galactic commerce." Rithmal's crest flattened against his skull. "You cannot be serious. Your people have invested centuries in building these trade relationships. You have established supply chains that span dozens of star systems. How can you simply abandon everything?" Captain Nam cleared his throat. "Ambassador, perhaps you should ask yourself why humanity is willing to abandon such profitable arrangements." The alien's large eyes focused on Nam with what might have been understanding. "You're saying that the profits were not worth the cost. I'm saying that some things are more valuable than money." Nam replied. Kang's communication device chimed with an urgent message. She glanced at the display and felt her expression grow serious. "Captain, we need to prepare for departure. The Incheon is ready to depart, and we're the last human vessel in this sector. What about the remaining commercial obligations?" Rithmal asked. "There are dozens of contracts that haven't expired yet. All obligations will be fulfilled remotely where possible." Kang said, "Physical deliveries will be completed by our automated systems. The aliens who hold those contracts will receive full documentation on how to maintain the systems after we're gone. Automated systems. Yes, Ambassador, human technology is quite capable of operating without direct supervision. Our cargo ships can complete their routes, and our communication networks can process transactions. The only difference is that there won't be any humans available to fix problems or negotiate new deals." Rithmal's feathers ruffled. "What if something goes wrong? What if we need technical support?" Kang picked up her own storage container and headed toward the door. "Then you'll have to figure it out yourselves. That's what independence means." The trip to the docking bay took them through the station's main commercial district, which had once bustled with activity from dozens of species. Now many of the shops were closed and the corridors echoed with emptiness. The human merchants had been the primary customers for many alien businesses, and their departure had created a cascade of economic failures at the docking bay. Captain Nam's ship Incheon waited with its cargo holds already loaded. The vessel was larger than it appeared from the outside, thanks to human spatial compression technology that the aliens had never quite understood. Several alien observers watched from the observation galleries as the final preparations were made. "Minister Kang," a new voice called out, and she turned to see Councillor Zithara approaching with a small entourage of council officials. "I must request that you delay your departure. The Council wishes to discuss revised terms for human participation in galactic affairs." Kang set down her container and studied the insectoid alien's compound eyes. "Counselor, the time for discussion was 18 months ago, when the Council delivered its ultimatum to Admiral Kim. The situation has changed," Zithara said. "We have new information about the scope of human involvement in galactic infrastructure. The Council is prepared to offer significant concessions." "What kind of concessions?" "Full Council membership with voting rights, equal representation in all administrative bodies, unrestricted territorial expansion rights, and a formal apology for any misunderstandings that may have occurred." Captain Nam snorted. "Any misunderstandings?" Zithara's antennae twitched. "The Council acknowledges that perhaps we underestimated humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. We are prepared to rectify that oversight." Kang felt a moment of genuine sadness. The offer was everything that humanity had wanted when they first joined the Council 150 years ago. Full membership and equal treatment would have solved most of the problems that had led to this moment, but the offer was coming too late, and for the wrong reasons. Counselor, I appreciate the gesture, but humanity has already committed to this course. The evacuation is complete, and our new policies are already being implemented. New policies. As of today, the Sol system is closed to all non-human traffic. This is not a hostile act, but it is final. Any vessel approaching human space will be turned away by automated defense systems. The alien delegation exchanged glances that suggested they had not expected this level of finality. Zith Ara's voice carried a note of something that might have been desperation. Minister, surely you understand that galactic civilization requires cooperation between species. No one can thrive in complete isolation. You're absolutely right, Kang said. Galactic civilization does require cooperation, but cooperation must be based on mutual respect and equal partnership. The Council had 150 years to learn that lesson and chose not to. She picked up her container again and walked toward the Incheon's boarding ramp. Behind her, she could hear the alien voices rising in what sounded like argument, but she did not look back. The ship's airlock sealed with a soft hiss, and she felt the familiar vibration of the engines warming up Captain. Nam joined her in the observation lounge as the Incheon pulled away from the docking bay. Through the viewport, they could see the alien ships still waiting in their queues for cargo that would never arrive. The station's lights were already dimming. As power conservation protocols activated, do you think they'll figure it out? Nam asked. Eventually, Kang said, but it might take them longer than they think. The galaxy is a big place and humanity was involved in more systems than anyone realized. Incheon jumped to faster-than-light travel, and the stars outside became lines of light stretching toward infinity. Behind them, Tau Ceti Station continued its slow orbit around the star that had given it its name. The human offices were already being sealed, and the automated systems were beginning their final operational cycles. In 6 months, the station would still be there, but it would be a very different place. The bustling commercial hub would become a quiet way station, serving a much smaller volume of trade. The aliens would adapt eventually, but it would take years for them to rebuild what they had lost, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity was building something new. Something that belonged to them alone. The Council had given them an ultimatum and humanity had chosen exile. But exile was just another word for freedom. The Incheon set course for Sol and the last human ship left galactic space. Behind them, the silence began. Dr. Song In-ae stood in the laboratory aboard the research station New Horizon and studied the data that her alien colleagues had spent 3 years trying to understand. The archived human research files contained breakthrough discoveries that should have revolutionized galactic medicine, but the other species were struggling to implement even the most basic applications. Scientist Keldor of the Crystalline Consortium flickered through several color phases as he examined the holographic displays. Dr. Song, these equations describe cellular regeneration processes that we did not know were possible. How did human researchers develop this level of understanding? Song smiled sadly as she adjusted the display parameters to make the data more accessible to Keldor's optical sensors. My colleagues at the Terran Medical Institute had been working on these problems for 20 years. They published their preliminary findings in the Galactic Journal of Xenobiology 5 years ago. Preliminary findings. Keldor's crystalline structure brightened with surprise. These results would represent a major breakthrough for our medical technology. For humans, they were just the beginning, Song said. The final version of this research was completed 2 years ago, but by then the political situation was deteriorating, so the data was never shared with the galactic scientific community. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Song had been working with alien scientists for 5 years since the human exodus, trying to help them understand the research that humanity had left behind. But every breakthrough only revealed how much further human science had advanced. Counselor Vextai entered the laboratory, flanked by 2 assistants carrying data recording equipment. His scaled features showed the strain of someone who had not been sleeping well. "Dr. Song, I need to ask you about the infrastructure analysis." Song nodded toward a secondary display where complex diagrams showed the interconnected systems that kept galactic civilization functioning. "The analysis is complete. Counselor, the results are not encouraging." "Show me." The main display shifted to present a 3-dimensional map of known space with thousands of connections linking different star systems. Each connection represented a piece of technology or a system process that required human knowledge to maintain properly. The red connections indicate systems that are currently failing due to lack of human maintenance. Song explained, "The yellow connections show systems that are operating at reduced efficiency, and the green connections represent systems that are still functioning normally." Vextai studied the display, and his expression grew increasingly grim. The map was dominated by red and yellow connections with only scattered patches of green. How much of galactic infrastructure depends on human innovation? 73%. Song said quietly, but that number is misleading, because it doesn't account for the cascading effects. When one system fails, it often causes problems in connected systems that were previously stable. Keldor's colors shifted to deep blue. "Dr. Song, are you saying that human scientists were maintaining most of our technological civilization?" "Not exactly." Song pulled up historical data showing the development of various technologies over the past 150 years. "Humans didn't build your civilization, but we were constantly improving it. Our researchers would identify problems before they became critical and develop solutions that were then integrated into existing systems." She highlighted specific examples: the quantum communication network that allows faster-than-light messaging, the power distribution, systems that supply energy to orbital stations, the atmospheric processors that maintain breathable air on colony worlds. All of these were originally alien technologies, but they've been extensively modified using human innovations. Vextai's claws scraped against the metal floor. "Why didn't we know about this level of dependency? Because humans were very good at making their contributions invisible." Song said, "When our engineers fixed a problem, they would integrate the solution so seamlessly that other species never realized there had been a problem in the first place. The laboratory's communication system activated, and General Bak Hyun-woo's voice filled the room." The recording was several months old, but it had only recently been decoded by Council Intelligence. "Attention galactic vessels. This is General Bak of the Terran Defense Force. Human space is now under protective quarantine. Any non-human vessel approaching the Sol system will be redirected to safe distance. All requests for communication or negotiation should be transmitted to the diplomatic relay station at coordinates 77 Alpha. The message was polite, but the technology behind it was clearly far beyond anything the Council possessed. The transmission had been detected simultaneously across dozens of star systems, suggesting a communication network that operated on principles the aliens did not understand. "How advanced are they now?" Vextai asked. Song consulted her personal files, which contained intelligence reports gathered by automated probes that had attempted to approach human space. "The energy signatures suggest construction projects on a massive scale. Entire star systems are being modified using techniques that our physicists say should be impossible." She displayed sensor data from the probe missions. The humans appear to be building some kind of network of structures around multiple stars. The energy output is comparable to natural stellar phenomena, but the patterns are clearly artificial. Keldor's crystalline form pulsed with rapid color changes, Are they building weapons? Unknown. Song said, but the scale suggests something far more ambitious than military technology. The humans appear to be engineering entire solar systems for purposes that we cannot determine. Vextai moved closer to the display. How long before they surpass our technological capabilities? Counselor Song said gently. I think they already have the technology gap that existed when humans left galactic space was much smaller than anyone realized. They were deliberately limiting their development to avoid triggering exactly the kind of reaction that the Council eventually had. You're saying they were holding back? I'm saying they were being polite. Song highlighted intelligence reports from human colonies that had been established beyond Council space. Look at the expansion rate. In 5 years, humans have established more colonies than most species manage in centuries. Their ships are traveling at velocities that should require impossible amounts of energy, and they're terraforming worlds in time frames that our best estimates say are physically impossible. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of the environmental systems. Vextai stared at the displays showing the expanding bubble of human civilization that was growing beyond the edges of known space. They never needed us, he said finally. No. Song agreed. But they were willing to work. With you anyway, until you forced them to choose between cooperation and independence. Keldor's colors had stabilized into a pattern that Song had learned to associate with deep thoughtfulness. Dr. Song, what do you think humanity is building out there? Song considered the question while studying the incomplete data from the probe missions. I think they're building the civilization they always could have built if they hadn't been trying to fit into someone else's galaxy. A new alert chimed on the communication system, and the laboratory's main display shifted to show an incoming transmission. The source was listed as unknown, but the signal strength suggested it was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Ambassador Jun Woo-seok appeared, on the screen wearing the formal uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. His expression was calm and professional, but there was something in his eyes that suggested vast changes happening beyond the range of Council sensors. Citizens of the galactic community, this message is being transmitted to all inhabited systems as a courtesy announcement. Humanity wishes to inform you that we have established new territories beyond the traditional boundaries of galactic civilization. These territories are sovereign human space and are not subject to any external authority. The ambassador paused and seemed to look directly at the camera. We extend an invitation to any species that wishes to establish peaceful diplomatic relations based on mutual respect and equality. Interested parties may transmit their requests to the coordinates provided at the end of this message. Another pause. We also wish to clarify that humanity bears no ill will toward any member of the galactic community. Withdrawal from Council space was motivated by philosophical differences regarding governance and self-determination. We remain committed to peaceful coexistence with all species that share these values. The final part of the message carried a subtle warning. However, we must emphasize that human territories are defended by technologies that have been developed specifically for this purpose. Any attempt at unauthorized entry or hostile action will be met with appropriate defensive measures. We trust that this will not be necessary. The transmission ended with a set of coordinates for a location at the edge of known space, where diplomatic contact could be established. Vextai turned to Song with an expression that might have been desperation. Dr. Song, can the Council re-establish contact with humanity? Can we negotiate some kind of arrangement? Song looked at the coordinates displayed on the screen and thought about everything she had learned about human technology and human determination over the past 5 years. Elder Counselor Mordeth stood in the center of the council chamber and felt the weight of his 1,000 years pressing down upon him like a physical burden. The chamber was the same as it had been for centuries, but everything else had changed, in ways that made his ancient mind struggle to comprehend the new reality. President Shin Hai-wan appeared on the main display screen transmitted from somewhere in human space through communication technology that the Council's best scientists could not understand. Her image was crystal clear despite being broadcast across impossible distances, and her voice carried none of the delay that should have accompanied such a transmission. "Honored counselors," she began, and her tone was respectful, but carried the unmistakable authority of someone who spoke for a civilization that no longer needed anyone's permission. "Humanity, thanks you for your willingness to engage in diplomatic dialogue. It has been 10 years since our peoples last spoke, and much has changed in that time." Mordeth studied the human woman's face and saw something there that disturbed him. It was not hostility or anger or any of the emotions he might have expected from a species that had been driven into exile. Instead, he saw a kind of calm confidence that suggested humanity had found something in their isolation that they had never possessed while part of galactic civilization. President Shin Counselor Vextai spoke from his position across the chamber. "The Council wishes to express its regret for the misunderstandings that led to humanity's departure. We have come to realize that perhaps our policies were not always as fair as they should have been." Shin's expression remained neutral. "Counselor, I appreciate the sentiment, but I think we need to be clear about what actually happened. 10 years ago, the Council delivered an ultimatum that would have reduced humanity to the status of a protected species under alien oversight. Humanity declined that offer and chose independence instead." The word independence hung in the air like a challenge. Mordeth had been present when the first human delegation arrived 160 years ago, seeking membership in the galactic community. They had been eager to learn and desperate to find their place among the stars. Now their descendants spoke of independence as if it were something they had discovered only after leaving. Counselor Zithara shifted in her seat, and her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights. "President Shin, the galaxy has changed significantly since humanity's departure. Many of the systems that we all depended upon have become unreliable. The Council believes that cooperation between our peoples could benefit everyone." "I'm sure it could," Shin agreed. "But cooperation must be based on mutual respect and equal partnership. The Council had 150 years to learn that lesson." Ambassador Jun Wuxiak appeared beside Shin on the display, and his presence seemed to add weight. "To the human delegation, counselors, we should be honest about the current situation. Humanity has prospered during our time away from galactic civilization. We have established new territories, expanded our technological capabilities, and developed solutions to problems that we never could have addressed while bound by Council regulations." Mordeth leaned forward in his ancient seat. "Ambassador, what exactly has humanity been building out there? Our scouts report massive construction projects that seem to defy the laws of physics." June smiled, and it was not an unfriendly expression. "Elder Counselor, we have been building the civilization that we always knew we were capable of creating. The constraints of Council membership required us to limit our development to avoid making other species uncomfortable. We no longer have those constraints." "Are you threatening us?" Vextai's voice carried a note of the old authority that had once commanded respect throughout the galaxy. "Not at all," Shin replied. "Counselor threats are unnecessary when you have the power to simply ignore problems that don't concern you. Humanity has no desire for conflict with the Council species. We are quite content to continue developing our own territories and our own civilization." The casual dismissal was more disturbing than any threat could have been. Mordeth realized that humanity was not seeking revenge or dominance. They had simply moved beyond the need to care what the Council thought about anything. "What would it take?" he asked. "What would it take for humanity to consider rejoining galactic civilization?" Shin exchanged a glance with June before answering. Elder Counselor, I think you misunderstand the situation. Humanity has no interest in rejoining galactic civilization as it currently exists. We have built something better. She gestured, and the display shifted to show images that made the assembled counselors gasp in amazement. Cities that floated in space without visible support, systems planets, whose surfaces had been completely transformed into garden worlds that supported impossible biodiversity stars that had been surrounded by structures that harvested their entire energy output for purposes that remained mysterious. This is what humanity has accomplished in 10 years of independence. Shin continued, We have terraformed worlds in months rather than centuries. We have developed transportation systems that allow us to travel between galaxies. We have solved the energy crisis by learning to efficiently harvest stellar output. And we have done all of this without restricting the development of any species or imposing our will on anyone else. The images continued showing human cities that existed in dimensions that should not have been accessible, and ships that moved through space using principles that the Council's physicists insisted were impossible. How? Zethara whispered. By accepting that the universe is much stranger and more wonderful than any of us realized, Jun replied. Human scientists have always been willing to question fundamental assumptions about reality. The Council's approach to research was always more conservative. Mordeth felt something cold settling in his ancient heart. You're saying that the Council has been holding back the development of galactic civilization? I'm saying that the Council created a system that prioritized stability over growth. Shin said, that worked well for species that were content with their current level of development. But it was never going to work for humanity in the long term. Vextai leaned forward. What do you want from us? Nothing. Shin replied simply, Humanity is entirely self-sufficient. We have no need for Council resources, or Council markets, or Council protection. We are here because Ambassador Jun suggested that it would be courteous to inform you of our current status and our future intentions. And what are your future intentions? To continue expanding and developing, and exploring the universe. Jun said, There are other galaxies beyond this one, and we have developed the technology to reach them. We estimate that within a century, humanity will have established colonies in at least 50 different galaxies. Faye. Scope of human ambition was breathtaking and terrifying. Mordeth had spent 1,000 years helping to govern a single galaxy, and these humans were casually discussing expansion across the entire universe. Would you? He began, then stopped to gather. His thoughts, would you be willing to share your technologies with other species? Shin considered the question carefully. Perhaps under very specific circumstances. If a species demonstrates that they are genuinely committed to peaceful development and scientific advancement, we might consider limited technology sharing, but it would have to be a genuine partnership between equals. What would that look like? Complete independence from the Council for starters, Jun said. Any species that wants to work with humanity would need to establish their own sovereign territory and their own government. We don't work with client states or protectorates. Zithara's antennae twitched. You're asking species to abandon the only form of galactic government that has ever existed. I'm saying that the Council model of government is incompatible with the kind of rapid development that humanity represents. Shin replied, The universe is vast and full of opportunities, but accessing those opportunities requires the willingness to take risks and challenge assumptions. The Council system was designed to minimize risk and preserve the status quo. Mordeth closed his ancient eyes and tried to process what he was hearing. Humanity had not just left galactic civilization. They had transcended it. They had become something that the Council could not understand or control or even meaningfully interact with. Is there any chance? He asked. Any chance at all that humanity might consider returning to this galaxy as partners rather than conquerors? Elder Counselor, Shin said gently, we never left this galaxy. We simply expanded beyond it, and we have no interest in conquest. The universe is large enough for everyone to find their own path. She paused, and her expression softened slightly. But if individual species want to establish diplomatic relations with humanity, the offer remains open. The coordinates for our diplomatic station are available to anyone who requests them. As equals. Vextai said, as equals. Shin confirmed. Nothing less will be acceptable. The transmission began to fade as the human delegation prepared to end the conference. Mordeth realized that this might be the last time anyone from the council ever spoke. With a human representative, President Shin, he called out, "What should we tell our people? What should we tell the galaxy about humanity's return?" Shin's image stabilized as she considered the question. Tell them that the humans who left 10 years ago were still thinking like members of someone else's civilization. Tell them that the humans who exist today have remembered what it means to be free.